Even when Newcastle United were playing in the Championship, they drew the 4th highest attendance in the country. Approximately 50,000 fans head to St James's Park every other week. But still, there are many fans who used to have the same habit, but now they choose to watch the game on television. What has changed?
There were a lot of reasons then that stopped me from going to games. And there are lots of reasons, such as the cost, for one. That I read somewhere now that the average age of a Premier League fan is about 40. And that's because the tickets are so expensive that a lot of people just can't afford to go. And then also for people of my generation, I remember when I first started going to match, you could stand, and not everything was better back in those days. I mean, there are a lot of improvements with the facilities now for supporters, but you used to be able to go and stand. You'd congregate with people that you knew, or like-minded people who wanted to sing through the match.
I think it's more football and the state of the club at the moment. So in terms of those 2 points, the club is kind of run by someone who's quite unpopular with the supporters. There doesn't seem to be any major investment in the team. I think it's quite an underperforming football club considering the size of its support. So I think that's why people might get a bit disenchanted and feel disenfranchised from it. In terms of football itself, it's so sanitised, and the Premier League is kind of omnipresent everywhere. Certain clubs attract most of the money, and kind of it just saps the joy out of it. It's too predictable and too sanitised, too predictable. It's just not as interesting as it used to be.
Just general financial crisis, I suppose, and just generally not having as much money as I did have. So I suppose that's the main reason. I suppose a little bit dissatisfaction with the performances and things as well. You start to get a little bit irritated, I suppose, by them, and the stuff behind the scenes has been a little bit irritating as well, I suppose.
There used to, there was a much better atmosphere, partly because we used to have terraces that people could stand on together. Supporters who were similar to each other could more easily identify with each other and meet and support the team together. Now it's everyone sits in rows. You sit in the same seat. You can't congregate with people that you're friends with just on an ad hoc basis. It was a lot cheaper to get in. It was very reasonably priced across the country, not just in Newcastle.
I suppose in early years when I first started coming to matches, it did seem to be a bit more, the atmosphere was a lot better. Whether that's partly when I first started coming, I would come on a Saturday morning, you'd queue, you'd get your ticket, you'd go in. There wasn't as much online booking, obviously. Well, there was no online booking when I was a child. There was less booking in advance. There was a better camaraderie, I suppose, inside the ground than there is now, with everyone seated and struggling to get, if you're a big group, you struggle to get seats together with everybody, whereas in the past you'd all turned up together, you all got seats together, and I think that created a better atmosphere within the stadium.
The atmosphere was so much better then. I remember being a kid, I think it must be about 13, 14, we used to go to the cinema, because we couldn't afford to go to games, but we used to go to the cinema in Newcastle and then hang around outside the gates till about 15 minutes before the game ended. They would open the gates to let people out, and they would let people in for free. We used to always run up and be really, really excited, getting to the top of the steps and looking out over the pitch. And latterly when I go to kind of Newcastle games, I just don't feel excited anymore. And I think mainly that's down to 2 things. One, the lack of atmosphere, and 2, having to sit down. I used to have a season ticket, and I got stuck in a seat. I got moved from a terrace to a seated place, and it was me and my brother and the people around us. I had nothing more in common with them other than we supported the same club. They were older people. They left early. They went down at half time 5 minutes early to get to the front of the queue for a pie and a burger. They never sang. They never made any noise, and I just felt so ostracised.
As owner for a day, I'd invest more money in the club. I think the biggest thing I think Newcastle owners could do to improve things would be to communicate more with the fans, as you very rarely get any sort of communication. They seem to have gone a complete full circle to the previous owner, who seemed to like to be in the press and like to have his say, which at times probably didn't help the club. But I think the new owners have gone to the extreme and probably don't communicate as much as they should.
I would probably start a process of engaging more with the supporters of the club so that they could be involved in decision making. and so that they could reasonably put forward their case on various points of club policy?
Well, firstly, I'd cut ticket prices, but however, if Newcastle were the only club that cut ticket prices, it would put us at a huge disadvantage to other clubs. So I think that needs to be done across the board. I think from FIFA, UEFA, the Premier League, the FA, some modern footballers are just very badly advised or are just mollycoddled by agents and Premier League clubs. I don't really want to give money to somebody like that, and I don't feel comfortable cheering them on.
I think certainly in the last 20 years, you know, you've got these multi-millionaires running around who've never done a day's work in their life, and I think it's very, very, you know, difficult for supporters to relate to people who seem so distant from them in every possible way.
Newcastle United is the fans. We don't have a rich benefactor here, and we're never really likely to get one. We're never going to attract someone like Abramovich. He went to Chelsea because it was in London. So the people who put the money into Newcastle United are the supporters. Without the supporters, the club would die.